Okay, so having just had 3 goes at recording this and finally feeling like I'd nailed it, you'll be delighted to learn that I then found out that my microphone wasn't actually switched on, so there wasn't any sound. Here we go. So what I want to talk about today is effectively, I want to discuss respecting religious beliefs and whether that actually takes place and what we mean by that, or do we just give that lip service? That's one of the things I want to talk about. But I also want to talk about the way in which we look at atheism with respect to other what are regarded as protected characteristics, with regard specifically to something that's just taken place with an Australian rugby union player. But first let me say I apologise, we are halfway through the month and this is only my first proper video for the month. I made a couple of quick off-the-cuff videos regarding trans women in sport on my second channel, Noel Hand Grenade, and I'll link that channel down below. But for the last week, I have been suffering with an eye infection. It turns out that I'd scratched my eyeball and a bacterial infection had got in, and I've cleared it up now with some wonderful cream, which doesn't look like sand, but by Christ, it fucking feels like you've poured a load of sand in your eyeball after it's been in there for about half an hour. But unlike pouring sand into your eyeball, it seems to have done the trick. So after a week of pain, I now have the ability to make videos again. So let me kick this off by sort of setting the scene with regards to this rugby union player. His name is something along the lines of Israel Folau, I'll go with Folau. Israel, but he's a Christian, not a Jew, and that's kind of relevant to the comments that he'd made. And what had happened is he had made a comment in which he had said that homosexuals, atheists, and some others will be going to hell. And he has been banned from rugby in Australia on the grounds that he said that homosexuals are going to hell. The fact that he said that atheists are going to hell doesn't seem to have even registered. That just seems to have got a free pass. That's part of what I wanted to talk about. But let me first talk about a comment that he made, because it's kind of amusing. Not the comment, but the response to it. He made a comment, and it sets the scene, because this is not the first time he's made these kind of comments. He's clearly a devout Christian, and he wants to sort of enact the ability of people respecting his beliefs to be able to say what his beliefs are. And about a year ago, 5th of April 2018, he said the following. He was asked on Instagram what was God's plan for gay people, and he replied, hell, unless they repent of their sins and turn to God. That doesn't seem a very controversial statement for a Christian to make, I have to say, and doesn't really seem very offensive to me. If he'd said, what is God's plans for atheists, and he'd said, hell, unless they ask Jesus for salvation or something, I wouldn't have thought, wow, what a tremendously offensive thing. I'd have thought, well, that's par for the course. That is what I would expect a Christian to believe. But nevertheless, this was the funny part, which is that rugby, I'm pleased he said it just for the response from Rugby Australia, who said, Folau's personal beliefs do not reflect the views of Rugby Australia. Well, knock me down with a feather. And there was me imagining that that was official Rugby Australia policy, that gay people get to burn in hell. Quite why they felt the need to phrase it like that, I don't know, but I'm pleased that it did, because it gave me a right laugh when I read that. Well, this occasion, about a week and a half ago now, bear in mind, this guy is big in the rugby union scene in Australia. He plays for Australia. He was due to represent Australia at the forthcoming World Cup in Japan. And what he said was, the committed Christian, this is on the BBC site, last week posted a banner on his Instagram account that read, drunks, homosexuals, adulterers, liars, fornicators, thieves, atheists and idolaters, hell awaits you. And as a result of that, he has been banned from rugby union in Australia. He used to play rugby league, which is, in case you're unaware, it's a different sport. You're 15 in a rugby union team, 13 in a rugby league team, and the rules are the different rugby-based sports, if you like. I used to play rugby league. They've said, the rugby league in Australia have said that they don't want him back either. So effectively, his sporting career is at an end now over this comment. And I don't really at this point in this video want to talk about whether it's acceptable for him to say these things. What I found interesting is that what you had here is two protected characteristics with regard to legislation across most westernized nations, which is religion or lack of religion and sexuality. He included both of them, but one of them, it was regarded as such a grave error of judgment, such a terrible, abhorrent thing to say, that this group of people would go to hell and that God would judge them, that he has not only just been criticised for it, but he has lost his job, he has lost his career for it, whereas saying exactly the same thing about the other group hasn't even raised a single word of condemnation. And further to that, I imagined, if he'd said that, bear in mind this guy's a Christian, if instead of including this list with homosexuals, drunks, fornicators, he'd said Muslims instead of atheists, I think he would be being banned now for saying homosexuals and Muslims. If he'd been a Muslim and he had said homosexuals and Christians, I think he would be being banned now for saying homosexuals and Christians. It seems to be exclusively atheists where you seem to get this kind of free pass. I don't know, maybe that's some kind of persecution complex I have, but it seems to be the way of things. Governments around the world seem to function in the same way, where they'll criticise, where they'll boycott something another government is doing because that government has some legislation that discriminates against Christians or discriminates against Muslims, and yet there are countless countries that have legislation that discriminates against atheists, against unbelievers, that has a death sentence. Potentially, they might not carry it out very often, but has a death sentence against people who do not believe in a god or gods. Anything other than atheists. If you're an atheist in this country, there's potentially a death sentence for that. And that just seems to get a free pass. That never causes any kind of scandal whatsoever. I find that a kind of odd double standard. So I discussed this on Twitter. And I got some responses, and one of the responses that I got from several people was this idea that, well, sexuality isn't a choice, but your choice of religion or no religion is a choice, and that is where the point of differentiation is being made. I have to say that it doesn't feel like that to me. That I feel that there's about as much likelihood that I'll wake up tomorrow morning wanting to suck a giant cock as there is me waking up tomorrow morning and deciding, well, actually, no, I do believe in God after all. All of a sudden, all this, what I perceive as a weight of evidence against that perspective, suddenly I just have a choice to overlook all of that and to say to myself, oh, yes, you do believe in God after all. It really isn't a choice, really. And I think this is kind of conflating two different things. There is clearly an innate component to our sexuality, but nevertheless our sexuality isn't entirely innate. We know that things that happen to us in our childhood can register, can lead to particularly strong fetishes in some people that last their entire lifetime. So that is not entirely innate. And it may well be true that none of us are born a Christian, a Muslim, a theist, or an atheist, but that does not mean that once you have had chance to formulate your opinions, to formulate your beliefs, that your beliefs remain a choice. Somebody else on Twitter pointed out, which I thought was very germane and very poignant, what he said was that your actions are a choice, but your beliefs are not a choice, and I thought that was absolutely bang on with regard to that. It really felt like a double standard, this. And it was a double standard that wasn't even being mentioned. It was almost as if atheists didn't exist on that line of terribly offensive things as far as he was concerned. The only thing that existed there was homosexuals, despite the fact that atheists are persecuted around the world in a way which often mirrors homosexuals, often in the same country. The countries that persecute homosexuals are the countries that persecute atheists, but just crack on with persecuting atheists because nobody gives a flying fuck about that. Interested to know what you think about that. The other thing that I'm interested in is that I think we kind of, this whole business of respecting religion and respecting religious beliefs, everybody wants to talk about that. Governments want to talk about that. Sporting bodies love to talk about that. Every organisation wants to talk about respecting people's faith, respecting their religion, respecting their religious beliefs. And I think it's a load of shit, quite honestly. I really do. I mean, I don't know where you draw the line with regard to things like what this guy said. I would say saying that hell, that God is going to judge you, for me is acceptable, but saying that you should be sent to prison or something on earth, that would be unacceptable. Aiming it at a specific individual would be unacceptable. Aiming it at as a group would be acceptable. That would be for me. But to me, the whole business of respecting religious beliefs, it's the same kind of thing as respecting free speech. As is often said with respecting free speech, if the only speech that you respect is free speech that is uncontentious, then you're not respecting the free speech that needs respecting. It's the contentious stuff, it's the offensive stuff that needs our protection, not the inoffensive stuff. And it does seem to me that with regard to respecting religious beliefs, we kind of... It's very, very superficial, isn't it? What we're saying is we will respect your religious... And I say this as an atheist, right? I say this as somebody who will never get those protections. I can't rely on those protections for what I have to say. But even when I'm looking at others, I can see that this is just kind of a... We're speaking with a forked tongue here when we're talking about respecting religious beliefs. What we mean is, while ever your religious beliefs are uncontentious... While ever your religious beliefs just happen to chime in with what the general sort of political and social zeitgeist is, then that's fine and we'll respect them. But if it happens to contradict any of it, right, then at that point we stop respecting them and we stop respecting your right to say these things, to hold those beliefs and to tell everybody what your beliefs are. You can't respect somebody's beliefs but you're never allowed to mention them. That isn't respecting somebody's beliefs, surely. I think if we're respecting a Christian's belief, then we have to respect the Christian's ability to regard things which are sinful as leading to you going to hell. Because that seems to be pretty foundational with being a Christian. I don't mind if you don't want to respect that, right? I don't mind if governments don't want to respect that, if sporting bodies don't want to respect that. But don't not respect that and at the same token say that you are respecting people's religious beliefs, because that's a load of tosh. What you mean is you will respect their right to say I'm a Muslim or I'm a Christian as long as there aren't actually any beliefs attached to it, or at least no beliefs which don't chime in with your own, with all the things that are there on your little glossy brochures that you produce saying what a wonderful organisation you are. That isn't respecting somebody's beliefs. Respecting their beliefs is respecting their beliefs when their beliefs are at odds with yours, when their beliefs are diverse from the cultural norms of the day. Okay, that's all I wanted to say on this. Interested to know what you have to say. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.